With all that's happening overseas, what does that mean for us here back in the States? Are we in for rough times and sky-high oil and gas prices? We'll check in with our resident economic guru, Jason Miller, to get his thoughts on the subject. We'll also take a minute to introduce you to the winners of the 2026 Professional Drivers of the Year. This is a great group of drivers who exemplify dedication and safety. And in addition to all of that, we will, of course, as always, get to the whole reason that you're here, the data. We'll go over freight and driver recruiting data and let you know exactly what we're seeing. For Randall Reilly, I'm Joshua Miller, and this is the 30-Day Reset. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 30-Day Reset. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we get going, I do want to take a quick second to remind you to subscribe to the channel, like and share the video. Turn on the YouTube notifications so you never miss new video content from us. We're back with a new edition of the 30-Day Reset at the beginning of every month, and each and every episode can be found both on the Randall Reilly YouTube channel as well as over at randallreilly.com, whichever one you prefer. You can also find all the latest from Digging Deeper, the Recruiting Roundup, and all of our Ask Emily shorts there in both locations as well. Plenty of great stuff for you to get into. And don't forget that everything we cover in today's episode of the 30-Day Reset, plus a lot more that we just don't have time to get into and cover here on the show, is in this month's download, which can be found down below. Get your copy and dive into all the charts, graphs, and more today. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into it. First up, it's Trucking by the Numbers, brought to you by Stratus. As you may imagine, a lot of the data and numbers we normally look at have been impacted in some way by the recent events overseas. Manufacturing had shown some positive movement, but now appears to be stuck in kind of a rut. In addition to that, we're all bracing for potential spikes in the diesel prices. The diesel futures are already at their highest point since late 2023, and they could go even higher. Jason will go into more detail about both the state of manufacturing and the impact on diesel a little later today in his economic update. As far as the recruiting data itself is concerned, search activity on Google tumbled 8% in February compared to the January searches. And when comparing that to last year, searches are down 18% year over year. Likewise, job postings are down. Postings for driver jobs on Indeed dipped by 7% in February, while seekers for those jobs dropped by 15%. And with all that combined, the number of seekers per job fell by 9% in February. As seekers and posts fell, the cost for leads increased by 16% month over month and 21% year over year. This increase does follow what we would expect to see with our seasonal trends, though. Lead costs for solo company drivers shot up 21%, while solo owner-op lead costs rose by 11%. And on the freight side of things, spot rates are now at their highest point since October of 2022, with the overall spot rates up 15% year over year. And that increase marks the strongest prior year comparison since way back in March of 2022. Overall load postings were also up, with a 39% increase year over year. Taking a look at our individual segments, everything was up. Dry van loads were up 31% year over year, while the rates climbed 19% compared to 2025. For refrigerated, we saw gains of 5% and 26% respectively, and flatbed came in with a year over year load increase of 49%, while rates were up 13% year over year. For more on all of this, plus much, much more, again, you can go ahead and get your copy of this month's download available below. Now let's take a look at this month's news story. In this month's news story, we highlight the winners of the 2026 Professional Drivers of the Year as named by Truckload Carriers Association. The winners were announced at the closing of the TCA's annual convention. The 5 winning drivers were recognized for outstanding contributions to the trucking industry, their commitment to safety, and their exceptional leadership both on and off the road. In addition to the recognition, each driver received a cash prize of $20,000. The annual award is sponsored by Cummins Inc. and Love's Travel Stops. Jose Samperio, the Vice President and General Manager of North America On-Highway at Cummins Inc., had this to say: "It's a privilege to help recognize these outstanding professionals who play a vital role in keeping our industry moving forward. Their dedication to high standards on the road and meaningful contributions to their communities make a significant and enduring difference." So, who are these 5 amazing drivers? And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any of these names. Meet the 2026 Professional Drivers of the Year. Marcia Lukenbill. Marcia has nearly 650,000 career miles with 193,000 accident-free miles in the past 2 years. She's been a company driver with Knight Transportation's El Paso terminal for the past 6 years and consistently qualifies for Knight's safety bonus. Nick Barboza. Nick has 27 years with Covenant Logistics with one of the company's strongest safety records. He has driven more than 3.5 million miles and has earned membership in Covenant's Elite 120 Club, which is the equivalent of circling the globe 120 times without a preventable accident. Tommy Cash, a cast specialty transportation driver. With more than 4 decades of experience, Tommy is one of only 32 drivers nationwide that is entrusted with hauling legacy nuclear waste from the U.S. Department of Energy. In addition to that, Cash makes a lasting impact through mentorship as he trains, mentors, and road tests new drivers. Richard Fertig. Richard is an Army vet with decades of professional driving experience and over 3 million safe miles. He's built a reputation with Smith Transport defined by safety, reliability, and consistent leadership. Jesus Acevedo Soto. Swift Transportation's youngest ever million-mile driver, a milestone which he crossed at 28, is affectionately known as Avocado by his peers. Jesus is a multi-time diamond driver, a distinction achieved by maintaining elite safety, fuel efficiency, and mileage standards for 36 consecutive months. The many drivers he has trained proudly call themselves the Guac Squad. So there you have it, the 2026 Professional Drivers of the Year. Congratulations once again to Marcia, Nick, Tommy, Richard, and Jesus. Thank you for doing what you do. If there's an outstanding driver in your fleet and you think they deserve the recognition, the nominations for the 2027 TCA Professional Drivers of the Year will be open this fall. I'll leave a link in the description with more information. Now let's check in with Jason Miller and see what he has to say in this month's economic update.
Welcome everyone to our March update. And given how dynamic the news environment is, I will timestamp that this is March 3rd at about 10 o'clock in the morning in case anything evolves from that. So where we're at right now, in terms of dry van truckload spot pricing, is rates have largely maintained where they were in February. DAT's initial data for March shows about about 3 cents per mile decline. I've got an inferred line haul rate here on the right. We haven't even had the EIA data for this current week, so I'm using the last week of data that we had. Is showing a little bit of a drop, but again, on a line haul basis, we're basically around 2018 highs. Now, obviously, other operating costs are up, so you're not making the profit today that you were back in 2018. But that is a sign of good news, but we'll need to be closely watching where rates evolve as we move through March. Now, on a demand side, there is some good news in that manufacturing is showing some positive momentum in terms of new orders and activity. However, with the caveat being that, I'll see language of, are we in a manufacturing renaissance? And the answer is categorically not yet. Basically, we've had a nice rebound in terms of new orders in January and February, but that momentum is only putting us back to sort of that long run average we were at in 2012 through 2019, based on data from 5 Federal Reserve banks and the Institute for Supply Management. So that reading doesn't look anything like we were seeing in 2017 or 2018 or even 2014 and late 2013. Similarly, the Chicago Fed, their manufacturing index, it's part of their monthly survey. It's in expansion territory, but it's not the type of expansion we were seeing in 2017 and 18 or 2014 or even the back half of 2020 through 2021. So I'd frame it as cautious optimism, but if people are telling you, manufacturing's roaring back, we're not seeing evidence of that yet. Now, one of the biggest concerns right now I have for freight demand this year is the single-family housing complex still just seems stuck, for lack of a better term. Wells Fargo and the National Association for Home Builders Housing Market Index, it's a diffusion index, so above 50 is expansion, below 50 is contraction. It fell again in February to 36 from 41 in January. So that is, home builders are just not feeling very good at the moment. And that suggests we're not likely to see a significant rebound in single-family housing starts. That's especially the case because we've seen the 30-year mortgage rate. Prior week, it had fallen below 6%, but it's back up to about 6.1-ish% at last check. So we're, again, above 6. And then when we also look, one of my favorite series is the single-family homes under construction. So this is not just the starts. This is everything under various stages of construction. What you'll see is that has been trending down all through 25. And given where we're seeing the housing market index at isn't likely to trend up, Again, that's going to be a proxy for how many homes are being built and how much freight is needed to move to finish those homes. But then lastly, what I want to finish with is diesel prices, because with the war going on with Iran, this is obviously major concerns about an energy shock. So talking as of, again, the 3rd at about 10 a.m., we've seen diesel futures prices jump to the highest levels that they've been since about August through October of 2023. If we stay at this current level, that would imply diesel prices of around $4.50 per gallon based on the EIA's data. Last week, we were at $3.80 or $3.81 per gallon. So what that means is you should be budgeting right now for the potential of at least a 70-cent per mile increase in diesel and adjust your bids accordingly. That would imply a roughly 12 to 13% dollar per mile increase in an implied fuel surcharge, for example, based on DAT's historical data. So that's where we're at now. We're going to be watching how things develop. If you're looking at news information on the current conflict, for trucking, what you want to be focusing on is information about whether the Strait of Hormuz is still not passable for tankers, liquefied natural gas, and also discussion about energy facilities being either attacked or production being shut down. That's what we are looking for. Obviously, we're all hoping for a swift end to this conflict, but you do have to realize that if this goes on for at least a month with that strait closed, you're looking at $5 a gallon diesel again, basically back to where we were in 2022. So you do have to now plan accordingly for that. That's our March update. If anything happens that is hugely earth-shattering, we'll probably do a second update for the month just to get folks a sense on where things stand.
Thanks so much for that, Jason. And just a quick follow-up here. That update with Jason was, as he said, filmed last week. We were still waiting on some of the recruiting data to come in, so we had to wait a bit to get our full 30-day reset put together. But we will get back with Jason for an update if any big changes or shifts take place in the next few weeks before our next edition of the April 30-day reset. If you'd like to dive into any of the data that Jason went over there, all of his charts you saw featured there are available, as is all the information for freight, our news story about the drivers of the year, and all the recruiting data we covered. You can get your copy of all that stuff in this month's edition of the 30-day reset download. And again, that's available for you down below. Click the link in the description if you're watching us over on YouTube, or you can just fill out the info in the short form below the video player if you're watching us over on the Randall Reilly site. Now, as I said, if a major development does take place regarding the conflict overseas, and Jason thinks that's going to really impact us and the trucking industry here in the States, we'll put out a quick update. So be sure to check in with us on our social media channels for any announcements about that. If that comes out, we'll put it all over our social, YouTube, all that good stuff. And with that, that's going to just about do it for us on this edition of the show. We'll be back at the beginning of April with another full edition of the 30-day reset, possibly before that with an update. Remember, keep your eyes peeled. And until then, thanks for watching.